You think high-paying jobs exist? They don't. That phrase, high-paying job, might be the biggest illusion that we've all been sold. You see, most people think that if they just pick the right career, the right degree, the right company, they'll be set for life. But that's not how it works. I know this because I was head of talent acquisition for R&D and G&A at a Fortune 1000 company. In other words, I was the guy who saw exactly how much people made, from entry-level engineers to senior executives. And what I realized completely shattered the way I thought about money, success, and high-paying careers. Everyone loves to talk about what field pays the most. Computer science, medicine, law. We see headlines like software engineers making $200,000 straight out of college. And yeah, that sounds amazing, but here's what most people never see. That's the top 1% of the best engineers at the best companies on the planet. The average software engineer makes around $70,000 to $90,000 a year. This is still good money, but not the dream everyone pictures. And the same thing happens across every so-called high-paying field. Now, if your goal is to be average, sure, some careers pay more than others. But if your goal is to be elite, if you want to be the best, it doesn't really matter what field you choose, because it's not the job that pays high. It's the individual who performs at that high level. Let's talk about a profession that most people think pays a lot, being an NBA player. In 2025, the average NBA player salary is around $12 million a year. Now, that sounds insane, right? But here's what most people forget. There are only 450 players in the entire NBA. Out of millions of people who play basketball worldwide, only 450 make it. These aren't just good players. They're the 450 best in the world. Now, compare that to the thousands of professional players who aren't in the NBA, the ones overseas, in the G League, or even smaller markets. Most of them make between $30,000 to $200,000 a year. This is the same sport, same job title, but completely different pay, because NBA players are operating at the absolute top of their field. Now, let's compare that to another group people don't usually think about, CEOs. The median CEO of a Fortune 500 company makes around $18 million a year. Once again, these are the 500 best business operators in the country, the CEOs of the biggest, most powerful organizations in America. But there are millions of CEOs in total, of startups, small businesses, family companies, and most of them make less than $150,000 a year. So what's the takeaway here? It's not about the job title. It's about being in the top fraction of performance within that job. And this is where everything changes, because that same principle applies to every field. Doctors, lawyers, realtors, farmers. If you can find a way to be in that top 1,000 or even top few thousands in your field, you can make life-changing money. It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is how far you can push it. I've seen it firsthand. When I was head of talent acquisition, I saw software engineers making $70K and others making $700,000, doing the same job title. The difference wasn't luck, it was leverage. So if you're still wondering what field you should go into, here's the truth. If you want to be average, pick a career where the average is already very high. That's computer science, medicine, and law. But if you want to be exceptional, pick a field that you actually enjoy, because that's the only way you'll sustain that years of obsession it takes to reach that 1% to 10%. Because when you become one of the best in your space, when your value is just undeniable, your compensation stops being a number on a chart. It becomes a reflection of your reality. That's how people make $500,000, $1 million, or more. Not because the job pays that much, but because they become that valuable. And I can tell you from experience, when I led both R&D and G&A hiring across a Fortune 1000 company, there were maybe 3 people at my level and scope in the company. That put me in the top 1,000 in my field. And that's why my compensation was well above $500,000. It wasn't because of the role. It was because of the level of impact that role demanded. So here's what I want you to remember. There's no such thing as a high-paying job. There are only high-value people. And this is the ultimate lesson. The only real advice is self-improvement. Everything else is just a distraction. Because at the end of the day, there's no shortcut and no high-paying job waiting for you. There's just you and your willingness to get so good that they just can't ignore you. So stop looking for high-paying jobs and start becoming a high-value person.